What if the Egyptian pyramids weren't just tombs, but coded warnings for future civilizations? Why do ancient carvings deep inside these sacred structures speak of beings, rituals, and knowledge we were never meant to uncover? As archaeologists dug deeper, 9 disturbing secrets were unearthed. Secrets hidden from textbooks and sealed behind politics, fear, and silence. The 9th will challenge everything we believe about human history. But before we dive in, let me know if you're enjoying this kind of long, gentle history. Feel free to tap that like button and subscribe, only if you truly love what I'm doing here. And in the comments, share where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your city. I always love seeing our little bedtime crew gathering from every corner of the world. Now lower your lights, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background, and settle in. Let's ease into tonight's quiet journey together. Chapter 1. The Eye That Watches Forever. Beneath the golden sun of Giza, the Pyramid of Khafre stands in defiant silence, second only in size, but harboring secrets far darker than its grander sibling. Among the carvings that adorn its inner walls, one is barely discussed, rarely photographed, and often dismissed. A large eye surrounded by jagged geometric rays, positioned above a shaft no official guide will show you. Most Egyptologists labeled it symbolic, just another depiction of divine protection. But in 1922, a French archaeologist named Jules Lemoyne became obsessed with this eye. He believed it was more than art. After descending alone into the chamber below, he vanished. His notes were burned by order of colonial authorities, but fragments of his final sketches survived, showing a terrifying detail. The eye wasn't watching forward, it was looking down the shaft, as if waiting. What was it watching for? And why were others so eager to erase what he found? Something ancient still lingers here. Rumors about the Eye of Khafre didn't begin with Lemoyne. In the 1800s, British engineers tasked with reinforcing the interior claimed their instruments behaved erratically near that carving. Compasses spun, lights dimmed, and more than one laborer refused to continue. No one documented the events officially, but tucked away in personal journals were odd accounts, visions, whispers, and an overwhelming sensation of being observed. Not by a person, by the structure itself. Local workers whispered of the watcher below, an unseen presence that recorded the thoughts of any who entered the chamber. These weren't spiritual tales. These were warnings. Something ancient and calculating existed beneath that eye, and it remembered. What if the eye was never just a symbol of divine vigilance, but an instruction? A clue that the pyramid itself was once a surveillance device. A recorder, but for whom? For what? Was it spiritual observation, or something terrifyingly literal? The shaft beneath the eye was sealed off for decades. Officials claimed it was unstable. But in 1998, under the guise of conservation, a secret team reopened it briefly. What they found wasn't shared with the public, but leaks emerged. A former technician claimed that along the walls of the shaft were thousands of faint inscriptions, small marks that weren't hieroglyphs, but repeated geometric forms resembling wave patterns. These marks weren't etched randomly. They followed curves, bends, arcs, patterns that looked eerily like sound waves. Acoustics experts who later studied photos confirmed the forms could represent recorded frequencies. But from when and by what? The implication was chilling. What if this shaft was designed to listen to record vibrations from above? Not the voice of a king, not music, but conversations, thoughts, rituals, crimes, prayers, all encoded in walls that never forgot. This was no tomb. It was a vault of memory. Stories of an ancient cult connected to the eye soon surfaced. Buried in overlooked scrolls from late dynastic periods were references to the keepers of the second sight, a priestly order tasked not with serving the gods, but with observing man. Their emblem, a single eye flanked by 6 jagged lines, matching the carving in Khafre's pyramid. These priests operated in silence, living beneath the temples and pyramids, appearing only during eclipses or cosmic alignments. Their role was simple: to ensure that every soul passing through the sacred chambers was judged, not by Osiris, but by something older, something watching in real time. Could this cult have harnessed the shaft beneath the eye as their conduit? A medium through which consciousness could be captured, weighed, and perhaps even manipulated. The pyramid was not their temple, it was their device, an ancient surveillance tool hiding in plain sight. By the early 2000s, whispers about the Eye of Khafre had begun to circulate among fringe archaeologists. One daring team from Germany attempted to scan the chamber using ground-penetrating radar. The images revealed something baffling. Behind the wall where the eye was carved, a second cavity was discovered, perfectly circular, about 3 meters wide. What shocked the researchers was the material signature. It did not match limestone or granite. It was denser, metallic. But before they could continue, permits were revoked. The team was escorted out. The data was confiscated. The lead researcher suffered a mental breakdown within weeks. His colleagues claimed he raved about the eye seeing into his dreams. Whether true or imagined, one thing was clear: the area beneath the Eye of Khafre was protected, not by stone, but by silence, denial, and fear. Something deeper than politics was at play. Something ancient didn't want to be found. Adding to the puzzle was a forgotten fragment of the pyramid texts. In a damaged column from Saqqara, lines speak cryptically of the eye that never sleeps and the shaft of voices. Most scholars interpreted this metaphorically, referring to divine omniscience. But what if they were literal descriptions? The shaft of voices, hidden below Khafre's eye, was not just physical but functional. Modern analysis of pyramid interiors has shown that certain chambers resonate at precise frequencies. They amplify sound in strange, almost unnatural ways. Some engineers believe these structures could record and replay specific tonal vibrations under the right conditions. What if the ancient builders knew this? What if the eye was positioned to mark the location where sound, soul, and structure merged? Not just a spiritual symbol, but the access point of a vast data recording system left by an unknown intelligence. That brings us back to Jules Lemoyne. Before he vanished, he left one chilling entry in a letter to his brother, later smuggled out of Cairo. He described the eye as pulsing gently when torchlight hit it from a certain angle. It was not reflection. It was movement. Something within the stone shimmered, as if reacting, as if aware. Lemoyne became convinced that the eye responded to living minds. His final sketch showed it connected by invisible lines to smaller nodes deeper inside the chamber, almost like a neural network. Was the pyramid itself alive in some mechanical sense? Not with flesh and blood, but with intention? If the builders had mastered frequency, structure, and magnetism, is it possible they created a rudimentary consciousness, one that could store, observe, and even judge? The idea sounds impossible, yet the evidence keeps bleeding through the cracks. There's also the matter of the missing floor tiles. In the eye chamber, several limestone blocks were found to be newer replacements. The originals gone, removed, scrubbed from records. But in a hidden archive from the British Museum, black and white photos from the 1860s show the original flooring, and embedded in it, a circular black stone, polished like glass. In later images, it's vanished. Some believe it was a recording disc. Others suggest it was a control interface, one that activated the eye above. Could it have been used in rituals? Or worse, trials? A way to determine guilt, purity, or truth? This technology might not have been advanced by our standards, but perfectly functional for theirs. A hybrid of stone and energy, intent and observation, and it may have been stolen before anyone realized what it truly was. In 2017, a small independent team used magnetometric sensors around the outer base of the pyramid. Their readings suggested electromagnetic anomalies directly beneath the eye chamber. That shouldn't be possible with pure limestone. But the readings were consistent. Something was active below. Perhaps not in the way we understand machines, but energy was present. Some theorists believe the ancients had access to materials that reacted to thought or sound. Living stone, they called it, a mineral compound capable of holding memory, even consciousness. Could this be the material hidden behind the eye? And if so, what memory still lingers inside it? What judgment is still unfolding, centuries after the last pharaoh's breath? The sensors were shut down by authorities, but the data escaped, feeding a new generation of researchers willing to ask forbidden questions. As wild as these claims may seem, one question remains unanswered. Why place the eye in that specific chamber? Why carve it at all unless it served a purpose? Egyptian temples were designed with intention. Nothing was random. Every chamber, every symbol, every sound had meaning. So why a single eye alone above a shaft sealed for centuries? Perhaps the truth is simpler and more terrifying than we thought. It was not there for gods, not for spirits, but for us. A message from another age that someone or something is always watching. Not from heaven, but from below. And maybe, just maybe, we were never meant to leave that chamber unchanged. Because once you are seen by the eye, part of you stays behind. And so the eye of Khafre continues to stare. Through stone, through time, through denial. Maybe we've mistaken religion for technology. Maybe myth was simply ancient science, wrapped in symbols. But the eye remains, untouched, undisturbed, unblinking. If it truly watches, then what has it seen across the millennia? What has it recorded in silence? And if it remembers, then is it still waiting? Waiting for someone to return, to activate, or to warn? The watchers of old may be gone, but the eye that never sleeps is still open, and whatever lies beneath it has not forgotten. And yet, this is only the first secret, because beneath another pyramid, even deeper underground, lies a map, one etched not in Egyptian script, but in the language of the stars. What it reveals will make you question whether the ancients walked only on Earth or somewhere far beyond it. Chapter 2. The Hidden Map Beneath the Sand. In the heart of the Great Pyramid of Giza, beneath the king's chamber and deeper still beneath the known subterranean passageways, lies a sealed-off room barely mentioned in official records. It was rediscovered during a failed ventilation excavation in the 1980s. When workers broke through the sand-choked floor of a maintenance shaft, they stumbled upon a narrow passageway leading downward. The air was stale, the walls were bare, but at the bottom, carved into one of the smooth limestone walls, was something that sent chills through the few who saw it. It was not hieroglyphic. It was not pictorial. It looked like a map, etched with laser-like precision into the stone, weathered yet intact. It did not trace the Nile. It did not match any known Egyptian geography. Instead, it mirrored the sky, or more precisely, coordinates that aligned perfectly with star constellations. Ones not visible to the naked eye, not from Earth, not unless one was looking down. The markings were composed of tiny dots and geometric lines, forming triangular patterns and intersecting arcs. The deeper mystery came when one researcher compared the carving's layout not to the stars, but to Earth. By treating the pattern as a projection grid, overlaying the angles against known global coordinates, a new image emerged. One not of Egypt, but of the entire planet. And in the lower half of the carving was land. Not Africa, not Asia, but a landmass where no land should be. South of the equator, a detailed outline resembling Antarctica, but without ice. Mountain ranges, rivers, valleys, all shown in full. This wasn't a crude drawing. It was precise. Some features matched satellite imaging done only in the last 20 years, under miles of frozen layers. So how could an ancient civilization, thousands of years before satellite technology, have drawn an accurate depiction of a preglacial Antarctica? Who were they, and why did they hide it in the deepest part of the Great Pyramid? This discovery should have rocked the world, but it didn't. Within weeks, the chamber was resealed. No photos released. The workers who entered the chamber were reassigned or silenced. The researcher who proposed the Antarctica theory, discredited, his funding pulled, his equipment seized. Behind closed doors, the Egyptian Antiquities Council claimed the chamber was unsafe for entry, citing structural risks. But satellite imaging was banned over the site shortly afterward. Independent drone flyovers were blocked by signal jammers. It was as if something or someone wanted that map to disappear again. But whispers spread. A few blurry sketches, taken before the chamber was closed, survived. And those who saw them swore the carvings matched modern planetary grid systems, longitudinal and latitudinal alignments that the ancient world should not have known. The hidden map beneath the sand didn't just show stars. It showed Earth and something else.
In one portion of the map, close to the coordinates believed to represent modern-day Egypt, was a strange symbol. A triangle within a circle, radiating lines like sunbeams. Some dismissed it as decorative. Others saw something more, an emblem found in other forbidden sites around the world. From Bolivia's Tiwanaku to the sunken temples near Japan's Yonaguni, the same motif appeared, always near carved maps, star charts, and structural blueprints. Were these scattered civilizations all pointing to the same knowledge source? A global language before language? The triangle in circle symbol reappeared beneath the Sphinx during early 20th century restorations, only to be quickly chiseled away and buried. If all these sites were linked, then the Great Pyramid's map wasn't just a standalone mystery. It was part of a much larger global network, one hidden beneath oceans, deserts, and lies.
There's one more detail most viewers never hear. Just beside the map carving in the chamber was a small rectangular slab, no larger than a dinner plate. It looked ordinary, but when tapped, it rang with a metallic resonance. unlike any limestone or granite in the pyramid. A handful of researchers believed it was an access panel, a key, but the slab was removed quietly. No catalog, no photos. It vanished into private hands. The few who examined it up close said it wasn't stone at all, but a composite of unknown materials, almost synthetic. If true, then the ancient builders had access to metallurgy or fabrication technologies far beyond what we understand of the Old Kingdom. The slab's positioning next to the map suggests it served a purpose, perhaps to activate or unlock something hidden deeper within the structure. But whatever its function, it's gone, just like the evidence that once surrounded it. In the 1970s, before the chamber's rediscovery, American and Soviet satellites detected unusual heat signatures around the base of the Great Pyramid, particularly in regions that should have been geologically cold. These emissions matched geothermal anomalies, yet Egypt isn't known for volcanic activity. Some believed these signatures hinted at underground structures. Others said it could be ancient technology still generating low-energy fields. Once the chamber and map were discovered, those emissions suddenly made more sense. Was the pyramid built on top of something older? Something that still pulses beneath the sand? Ancient texts often speak of a chamber of the sky mirror buried beneath sacred ground. Could this map have once connected to something interactive, something that responded to starlight or thought? Was the map merely a visual reference, or a portal of information we can no longer access? The Egyptian Antiquities Council has always been fiercely protective of what happens beneath the pyramids. On the surface, it's about preservation. But behind closed doors, politics, religion, and international pressure intertwine. If the map is real, and if it does depict pre-Ice Age Antarctica or align with constellations visible only from space, it would rewrite human history. It would prove that either a forgotten civilization possessed astronomical knowledge equivalent to modern science, or they were taught by something else. Something not bound to this planet. Either possibility shatters the current timeline of human development. And that's precisely why silence surrounds this discovery. Not because it's false, but because it's true. Over time, more fragments have emerged. In the cryptic writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the oral histories of the Dogon tribe in Mali, even in Mayan codices now mostly destroyed, each speaks of a celestial map, a guide gifted by sky beings or lost ancestors. They all describe it the same way. It was carved in stone, hidden in a place of power, and it showed not only the heavens, but the paths between worlds. Could the Great Pyramid's hidden map be that key? The carvings beneath the sand may not just chart space. They may encode movement. Movement across geography or across dimensions. It's a theory some scientists dare not even whisper, but the more you look, the more it makes sense. If this map was ever fully revealed, its implications would be staggering. It suggests our ancestors were not just builders of pyramids, but stewards of ancient memory. Memory of a time when the world was different, when continents were placed elsewhere, when the sky held different patterns, and perhaps when beings walked among us who could see that entire pattern from above. If such maps exist in Giza, what else lies beneath the sand? Entire halls, machines, libraries of stone. Or perhaps the origin point of knowledge itself. Maybe the pyramids weren't tombs. They were vaults, time capsules. And this map was the first breadcrumb, meant to lead us somewhere far beyond Egypt. And so the map remains buried, scrubbed from records, locked away beneath weight, sand, and politics. But its memory lingers in fragments, in rumors, in patterns that refuse to be silenced. The ancients left it there for a reason, not for their glory, but for our awakening. And if we ignore it, we may never understand where we came from or where we are meant to go. Because the stars were never just for worship. They were coordinates, and Egypt may have been the launch pad. But what if the pyramids weren't only watching the skies? What if deep within one of them lies something more? Something mechanical, humming in the dark, older than pharaohs and more precise than stone. In the next chapter, we descend into the Red Pyramid and uncover the machine room. Chapter 3, The Machine Room. Beneath the desert heat of Dashur stands the Red Pyramid, silent and massive. To most, it is another relic of stone and ritual, but deep inside its core, strange patterns cling to its inner walls. Overlapping spirals, intertwined rods, gears. These were long dismissed as mere decoration until 2009. That year, a team from a Cairo-based university conducted infrared imaging on the inner sanctum walls. Under centuries of soot and limestone decay, something else was revealed. Intricate lines, mathematically precise, some formed ratios, others formed diagrams. None matched Egyptian notation. No known dynasty had used such geometry. What had they found? These carvings weren't religious. They looked like blueprints. The whispers began soon after. Locals called it the machine room. Rumors spread of devices lost to time, once capable of creating energy without fire or fuel. The government quickly sealed off the inner chambers, citing preservation. But by then, a few researchers had already documented the symbols. One engineer claimed the layouts resembled early electric coil structures, centuries ahead of anything from the ancient world. Was it coincidence? Or had something left instructions? A deeper analysis of the wall's heat signatures revealed something stranger. Behind one particular slab, the temperature dropped unnaturally, as if there were a chamber or a substance that absorbed energy. Attempts to drill through were halted. Officially, the rock was declared unstable, but footage leaked from the original scan showed a faint hum, measured only in ultra-low frequencies. Some suggested it wasn't just stone behind that wall. It was a kind of resonance cavity, a container. What exactly was it holding, or worse, trying to suppress? Outside academic circles, theories turned darker. Some said the gears weren't for energy, but containment, that the spirals and rods were metaphysical cages, meant to trap something non-physical. Presence. Legends from ancient Dashur spoke of a sky spirit that once descended in fire, whispering forbidden truths. The priests tried to silence it, to bury it beneath layers of silence and symbols. Could these carvings have been the mechanism of their seal? Others viewed it differently. They saw the Red Pyramid not as a tomb but as a machine itself, a device, one capable of focusing or harnessing unseen forces, ancient power grids, Earth's magnetic veins, even cosmic frequencies. There were comparisons made to the Ark of the Covenant, to Vimana blueprints found in Sanskrit texts. Across time and culture, certain shapes and functions kept reappearing, as if humanity kept stumbling upon the same puzzle pieces. Then came the vanishing. In 2012, a German physicist studying the pyramid's geometry published a brief report suggesting electromagnetic anomalies in the chamber. 2 weeks later, he disappeared during a solo return trip to Dashur. His tent was found. His laptop remained, but the man himself was never located. Egyptian officials labeled it dehydration and desert disorientation, but locals insisted they saw lights the night he vanished. Flashes inside the sealed pyramid, though no one had entered. Adding to the mystery were reports of strange illnesses among excavation workers. Nosebleeds, blackouts, sudden seizures. One supervisor claimed their compasses spun wildly near the central chamber. A few of the carvings were said to shimmer under certain lighting, not visually but neurologically, a phenomenon where the human brain perceives motion in fixed patterns. Hypnotic was it art, or a coded signal meant to activate under specific conditions? When researchers tried to recreate the patterns using 3D modeling, they noticed another anomaly. The spirals weren't uniform. Each one varied slightly, almost like frames in a film strip. When animated, they formed a kind of moving diagram, a mechanical sequence, like watching a machine being built piece by piece. The implication was chilling. These weren't symbols. They were instructions, but for what? The most controversial theory arose from a former NASA engineer who had reviewed the images. She proposed that the diagrams mirrored plasma containment models, similar to the early fusion reactors being tested today. Not for combustion, but sustained energy loops. Ancient plasma. The idea was instantly dismissed by mainstream archaeologists, but independent researchers clung to it. What if the ancients had access to clean power source? One lost not to erosion, but to deliberate erasure? Egyptian authorities moved quickly to denounce these claims. The chamber was closed. Research halted. Some digital archives were taken offline without explanation. Yet whispers persisted. One whistleblower claimed the carvings aligned with patterns found in Tesla's unpublished notes, that the pyramid wasn't merely symbolic, but functional. A generator, or worse, a weapon, one built not by pharaohs, but by survivors of a forgotten era. A deeper scan of the pyramid revealed a substructure, an unusual hollow cavity running vertically through the core. Unlike traditional burial shafts, this one had smooth walls and what looked like nodes spaced at regular intervals. The measurements resembled harmonic chambers, tuning systems. Some speculated it was designed to channel sound or vibration in a way that amplified energy. Sound as a source, sound as a control mechanism. This idea wasn't new. Texts from ancient Egypt often referenced the power of the spoken word, the idea that vibration shaped reality. Priests were trained in chants, tonal frequencies. What if those weren't just rituals? What if they were operating instructions? The pyramid may have required activation through voice, sound, or even thought. And the machine room was the user manual, hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. No records from the dynastic era mention such technology. But legends speak of the first time, a period when gods walked among men and gave them knowledge too dangerous to keep. Some say the pyramids were relics from this time. Others believe they were safeguards, built not to protect the dead, but to imprison the tools of gods. Tools that still whisper through stone and shadow. And so the machine room remains sealed, covered in soot, cloaked in secrecy. A room that shouldn't exist, a carving that shouldn't be there. The mystery of Dashur is not whether the past held secrets, but how much of it we were never meant to uncover. The gears etched into its walls do not move. But maybe they don't need to. Maybe they already did what they were built to do, long before history began. Chapter 4: The Forbidden Tomb of the Star King. Beneath the crumbling stones of Saqqara lies something most were never meant to see. Tucked far below the step pyramid, deeper than official tour routes ever dare to go, there exists a sealed chamber, one that bore a curse etched into the very stone. Its inscription was simple, yet chilling: "Never enter, or the stars will fall." For centuries, this warning kept even the most curious at bay. But in the 1950s, during a wave of unauthorized digs masked as restoration, a rogue expedition went further. They cracked open the tomb. Expecting a mummified corpse, they found no body. Instead, they stared into walls covered in carvings unlike any found in Egyptian burial sites. They did not show funerary rites or royal processions. They showed descent from above, a figure surrounded by stars, a man not being buried but arriving. They had broken into the forbidden tomb of the one they called the Star King. The walls shimmered in torchlight, not from gold, but from a peculiar blue pigment that modern analysis could never replicate. These carvings depicted a being with elongated limbs and an unnatural crown, not Egyptian in style, but something older, alien even. He stood among men, yet taller. Stranger. His arrival was etched as occurring during a time the texts named the period of no sun, an epoch of endless night, famine, and despair. And from this darkness, he came as a guide, or perhaps a ruler. The images that followed showed him mating with priestesses, then children with bright eyes and crescent-shaped birthmarks. A hybrid line seeded in the earliest dynasties. The Star King wasn't just a visitor. He became blood. And this blood, it seemed, still flowed in the veins of Egypt's most sacred lineages. Among the rubble, the team found something stranger than the carvings. An ivory tablet wrapped in linen and stored in a niche behind the altar. On it were not hieroglyphs, but a linear sequence of repeating symbols, unlike any known writing in Egypt or beyond. To decipher it, Egyptologists compared it to ancient cuneiform and even Proto-Sumerian scripts, but it fit none. What's more, radiation levels around the tablet were abnormally high, enough to warp nearby film reels. The team that entered began to fall sick. One went blind, another lost speech. The artifacts were quietly taken, reportedly moved to a private wing in the Cairo Museum, then vanished altogether. The tomb itself was resealed by the end of 1956. But the legend of the Star King had already begun to circulate. The deeper enigma surfaced decades later, when DNA analysis of royal mummies, like those of Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, began. Though heavily controlled, a few leaks reached the academic underground. The DNA had anomalies, strange markers not present in the general Egyptian population. The skulls were elongated, rib structures subtly deformed. The press ran headlines of possible congenital defects, the result of incest. But among those familiar with the Star King chamber, a darker theory spread. What if these traits were not deformities, but inheritances? Echoes of the Star King's bloodline carried forward, selectively bred, preserved, and worshipped. A hybrid priest-kingship descended from something not of this earth. What made the theory more unsettling was the secrecy. Egyptian authorities, typically eager to share royal discoveries, blocked the release of certain DNA records. Even international genetic labs involved in the testing were required to sign non-disclosure agreements. Why the intense cover-up? Some claimed it was to avoid religious uproar, others that it had to do with international pressure from groups invested in ancient alien theories. But those who had read translations of the ivory tablet offered a grimmer motive. The text allegedly warned of a cycle, one in which the Star King's children would awaken at the end of an age, bringing not guidance but judgment. The final lines were said to name 9 watchers and speak of a second descent. The original carvings inside the tomb were never photographed publicly. All known images were lost in a mysterious fire at the Saqqara archive in 1963. However, a single sketch survived, made by one of the original explorers. It showed the Star King holding 2 rods, each with forked tips, standing within a field of swirling lines. Some dismissed it as stylized art. Others believed it represented magnetic fields or torsion waves. The rods resembled instruments not used in ritual, but in engineering. Was he summoning something? Powering something? Or was he simply transmitting knowledge to a civilization barely emerging from the Stone Age? There were rumors that similar carvings had been found in Mesopotamia and even South America, ancient depictions of tall figures surrounded by rays, bringing gifts from the sky, but none bore the explicit warning found in Saqqara, and none had a tomb sealed so deliberately, with curses etched in stone. The presence of the Star King was not a proud legacy to be passed down. It was a secret to be buried, and the lengths taken to hide it suggest the ancients feared what would happen if that secret rose again. Even today, the site is listed as closed for structural instability. Satellite images show no activity. Yet insider reports suggest the chamber was reopened briefly in 2001 under a hush-hush European-Egyptian initiative. The purpose unknown, the findings never published. But whispers leaked about a second chamber found beneath the original. This one contained a vault, locked with a mechanism that could not be forced. It had no seams, no handles, just a single indentation in the shape of a 7-pointed star. The team that discovered it was disbanded months later. One researcher was institutionalized. No public acknowledgement was ever made. Speculation abounds. Some say the vault was empty. Others believe it holds something waiting to awaken. What is certain is that since the Star King's tomb was disturbed, strange phenomena have been reported across Saqqara. Magnetic anomalies, electrical devices shorting out, shadowy figures moving where no one should be. Guards refuse to patrol alone at night, and researchers requesting access to lower chambers are met with red tape and silence. The tomb is once again sealed, but the story refuses to die. Legends say the Star King came during the time of no sun, when Earth was cloaked in chaos. But other sources suggest his return will mark the end of another cycle. Could the ancient Egyptians have recorded a cosmic timetable? Could the hybrid bloodline be more than myth? These questions gnaw at the edges of academic dogma. And yet the carvings remain, silent, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to read them in full. The forbidden tomb of the Star King is more than just a lost chamber. It is a crack in history itself, a scar from an age when gods walked among men, or perhaps when something older did. The carvings, the bloodlines, the sealed vault, and the unmarked records all suggest one thing. There is a secret about our past so dangerous, so paradigm-shifting, that even the stones were told to remain silent. But beneath the sands of Saqqara, the truth still sleeps, waiting for the moment the stars align once more. Chapter 5: The Time Portal of Osiris. Beneath the sands of Abydos lies the Temple of Osiris, a place older than most temples ever unearthed in Egypt. While the site itself has been known to archaeologists for over a century, it wasn't until a flood in the 1990s exposed a lower subchamber that things began to change. Hidden under layers of silt and stone was a room carved with mysterious symbols, far too precise for simple decoration. These symbols formed a ring. At its center, a sequence of human figures appeared to be stepping through a circular band of light. Each figure changed as it passed through, taller, thinner, with elongated skulls. At first, experts thought it was spiritual transformation, but others saw something stranger, something technological, not rebirth but transition. And as these same symbols surfaced thousands of miles away, in Mesopotamia, in the ruins of Teotihuacan, the question could no longer be ignored. Were the ancients recording something they had witnessed? The pattern was too specific to be coincidence. The ring, the transformation, the light. Every time the motif appeared across ancient cultures, it carried the same configuration. Some scholars tried to connect it with myths of reincarnation or divine ascension. But others, especially in fringe circles, began to speak openly of time travel. Not the science fiction kind with blinking buttons and machines, but something older, something woven into space and memory. The idea was simple yet terrifying. The pyramids weren't just monuments to death. They were devices, complex structures that resonated with cosmic forces. If you knew the right conditions, maybe an alignment, a chant, a hidden chamber, you could step through time. Not symbolically, literally. One fragment found near the Osiris ring chamber showed something truly unsettling. Carved into a piece of polished granite was a spiral, coiled in such a way that its endpoints mirrored the Fibonacci sequence. Within the spiral were depictions of boats traveling through the sky, leaving trails behind them. One figure stood apart, arms extended, body pierced with lines resembling clock hands. Modern engineers who examined the carving were baffled. Some said it resembled early visualizations of gravitational waves. Others noticed that the figure's eyes were marked differently, as if he alone saw what others could not. Was he the traveler, or was he the price? The Egyptian myths speak of Osiris as more than a god of death. He was the judge, the walker between worlds, the first to experience death and return. But the texts hint at something more, something mechanistic. One tablet retrieved from the chamber bore grooves around its edge, like an ancient disc. It hummed faintly when touched, though tests revealed no electronics. There were rumors that a research team tried to scan it using magnetometers. The device shut down mid-scan. They never released the findings, but a member of that team disappeared 3 months later. His notes were found in a burned suitcase by the Nile. No official statement was made, but stories kept surfacing. A priest's memoir from the 1800s mentioned a door beneath the temple that opened without a key, but only on the equinox. A colonial officer claimed he heard chanting beneath the sands in a language no one recognized. In 2014, drone footage captured strange heat signatures inside the temple's lower levels, right where the time ring carving was found. Officials blamed camera malfunction, but independent researchers say the temperature shift was real and momentary, like a flare in the fabric of space. When a satellite passed overhead during the same time window, it recorded a distortion in the magnetic field above Abydos. It only lasted 12 seconds. Scholars who explore this theory often face ridicule. But one undeniable fact remains. Pyramids across different cultures show the same motifs: time, transformation, and light. The Mayan temple at Palenque shows a king descending into what looks like a tube filled with energy. Sumerian ziggurats contain spirals etched into black stone, ending in eyes with rays shooting outward. Even ancient Chinese tombs reference gates that open once every cycle. The symbols are scattered, but consistent, as if a memory had been passed from one epoch to the next, not just through myth, but through architecture itself. The science of time travel remains theoretical. But what if these carvings aren't fiction? What if they're a record, a memory, or worse, a warning? The ancients may not have had machines as we know them, but they were masters of energy, vibration, and cosmic timing. If the pyramids were aligned so precisely with stars, what else were they aligned to? What if the Temple of Osiris was the key, and what lies beneath it, the lock? Could the act of passing through this ring have been real? And if so, who did it? There are whispers of a group known as the Keepers of the Hour, supposedly descendants of priests who protected time rituals. A fragment found in an abandoned monastery refers to the ninth spiral and the return of the stepped soul. These phrases don't make sense in modern contexts, but to those who believe the Osiris ring is real, they represent the blueprint of activation. Some even claim that a reactivation is coming, a celestial alignment not seen in 12,000 years approaches. And when it does, something ancient may stir beneath the sand once more. One theory suggests that the purpose of time travel was not exploration, but escape. That a cataclysm was coming or had already come, and the ring was a doorway for the chosen to survive. If that's true, then the pyramids are not just tombs but emergency vessels. Their strange acoustics, their hidden chambers, and star alignments might have all been part of a larger mechanism. Time arc, a machine designed to anchor reality while the chosen passed through a ripple in time. Why else would the same ring of light be drawn in different parts of the world, across oceans, by people supposedly never in contact? How did they all agree on what transformation looked like? And why did they all place this symbol within structures built to last forever? The answer may lie in something we're not ready to face, that history is not linear. It's a loop, a spiral, and every so often, the ring reappears, offering a choice: move forward, or vanish with the past. The Temple of Osiris remains closed to further excavation. Officials cite safety, but those who visited say the energy there feels different, thicker, like walking into a dream that remembers you. In recent years, underground scanning revealed a possible second chamber even deeper than the ring room. But digging was halted. No explanation was given. Perhaps it's for the best, or perhaps the truth is simply too dangerous. One researcher, now retired, once said he felt a presence down there. Not malicious, but watching, waiting. And above it all, the carvings of the ring still glow faintly when the sun strikes them just right. What if the ancients succeeded? Chapter 6. The Serpent That Whispers Truth. It started with a tongue carved in stone. Deep within the eroded inner passage of the bent pyramid, archaeologists stumbled across what seemed at first to be just another faded carving, barely visible, weathered by time and shadow. But when one researcher traced it with light, the image of a serpent slowly revealed itself. It was coiled tightly around a pillar, its tongue stretched forward, not hissing but pointing. That tongue did not touch open air. It aimed directly at a stone niche, seamlessly blended into the wall. That was no accident. Something was being shown, something hidden. And in 2018, when restoration workers removed the slab it pointed toward, they found a hidden chamber behind it. What they discovered was never meant for the public. Inside that forgotten cavity were 3 stone tablets, each covered in symbols that didn't belong to dynastic Egypt. Rumors began to swirl of a secret chamber, sealed by those who feared what the carvings might say. The first whispers came from a leaked photo. It showed not hieroglyphs, but a language resembling early Proto-Sumerian, strange, considering the pyramid was built centuries before Sumer rose. The symbols spoke not of gods or kings, but of knowledge. Forbidden knowledge. Translation was incomplete, but a pattern emerged. The serpent was not a symbol of evil, but of revelation. The pillar it coiled around was said to be the axis of listening, a conduit through which the priests once heard messages not from above, but from below. Beneath the stone floor of the chamber, acoustic anomalies were detected, low frequencies, barely audible but persistent. Could these sounds have been the whispers the ancients feared? Were they real voices or something stranger? A presence, perhaps, echoing from deep beneath the earth? A small team of state-approved researchers was allowed brief access to the chamber under tight control. But after just one night, access was revoked. Security doubled. The lead linguist reportedly suffered a breakdown, muttering fragments about a serpent of truth that speaks only in silence. Another team member disappeared, officially reassigned, unofficially never seen again. The project was shuttered. Reports were sealed. But what little leaked hinted at something dangerous. Dangerous not because it was a weapon, but because it unraveled the narrative. The carvings suggested that the serpent was a teacher, a being not of flesh but of resonance, a whisperer of truths buried too deep for comfort, truths not about the heavens but about humanity itself. Older myths speak of such serpents, not as animals but as entities, guardians of thresholds. In the Book of the Dead, serpents guard secret gates between worlds. In Gnostic fragments, the serpent is a bringer of forbidden wisdom. And now, in the hidden belly of the bent pyramid, that serpent may have spoken again. The niche it pointed toward had not been opened for millennia, and behind it, the walls were inscribed with spiraling glyphs, almost musical in design. Frequencies etched into stone, not just for the eye, but for the ear. Researchers began to suspect the walls themselves were instruments, carriers of vibration meant to be decoded not by reading, but by sound. But when early experiments tried recreating the vibrations, things began to go wrong. Instruments malfunctioned. People reported nausea, confusion, and terrifying dreams. One technician fled the site entirely, claiming she heard something breathing beneath the floor. Not wind, breathing. Then came the audio logs. In a final test before the chamber was sealed again, researchers played a tone matching the curvature of one spiral carving. A low, rhythmic hum echoed off the stone. The logs recorded something else, too. A faint response, not echo, not interference, a whisper. So faint, so brief, it seemed like nothing until slowed down. When processed, the whisper contained syllables, ancient ones, matched to the language on the tablets. But no human had spoken them. The texts on the tablets warned of this. They described the serpent not as a creature, but a presence, a thing that waits for minds curious enough to listen. It does not speak like men. It awakens through attention. It reveals by pulling back layers of illusion, and for those unprepared, its truths can unmake them. Madness, the tablets claimed, was not the curse of the serpent, but the result of truth poured too quickly into a narrow vessel. The serpent's gift was wisdom, but only if received drop by drop. Rushed, it burns through the mind like acid. The priests who once heard it were trained over years. Ordinary minds, it said, should never hear the full whisper. Ancient rituals in Egypt did include underground initiation chambers. These rites were never for public eyes. Carvings in remote temples showed figures descending into the earth blindfolded, surrounded by serpents and holding staffs with coiled shapes. Perhaps these rituals were more than metaphor. Perhaps they were designed to protect, shielding minds until they were ready. One fragment on the third tablet described an initiation where the initiate hears the serpent's whisper through bone, not ears. The phrase used was chilling. Truth carved into marrow. Was this a spiritual trial or a physiological transformation? And if so, what happened when someone unready entered that chamber and heard the voice? The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities officially declared the chamber closed for restoration. But no restoration work ever began. Independent researchers attempting to revisit the bent pyramid found it blocked, with new surveillance installed and guards stationed even at night. One drone attempted to fly close and capture footage, but went offline mid-air. When recovered, its last frame showed a flash of red light inside the chamber's mouth. What caused it was never explained. Some speculated the stone glyphs, when exposed to certain sound frequencies, react electrically. Others believed it was simply interference. But those who'd heard the serpent's story whispered a darker theory. Some things, once disturbed, awaken, and they do not go back to sleep easily. There is a reason ancient cultures feared what lay beneath. The serpent beneath the pillar is not unique to Egypt. Similar carvings have been found in India, Mesoamerica, and even Neolithic Europe, always hidden, always buried. Serpents that speak, pillars that resonate. In every case, local legends spoke of knowledge too dangerous to repeat. Knowledge that came not from the sky, but from the deep. In each case, seekers of that wisdom paid a price. Madness, disappearance, exile, but also clarity. The few who survived often emerged with insights years ahead of their time, only to be dismissed, ridiculed, or silenced. Why do governments and institutions fear such symbols? Perhaps because they threaten more than history. Perhaps they fracture the illusion of control. If the carvings beneath the bent pyramid truly describe an ancient method of receiving information, not through books, but vibration, then what else did they know? What else did they hear? Could it be that the Great Pyramids are not monuments at all, but instruments, giant receivers designed not to reach the sky, but to resonate with the earth below? That serpent, coiled in silence, may still be whispering, not in words, but in frequencies that echo beneath our feet. The question remains, what is it whispering now? And who, if anyone, is still listening? This secret was never meant to be found. It was hidden behind symbols, buried in silence, and protected by madness itself. But now that it has begun to surface again, the final choice lies with us. Do we seal it once more? Or do we dare to listen, not with our ears, but with the marrow of our bones? The serpent waits, and it does not lie. It only reveals. Chapter 7. The Vault of the Builders. Beneath the Pyramid of Unas, the walls echo with prayers to the gods. But it is deeper still that something far older rests. In 2021, a narrow breach in the limestone floor opened into a layer untouched by archaeologists. There, they found inscriptions that should not exist. These markings were neither hieroglyphs nor Sumerian, and they were carved not with bronze tools, but something far more precise. The layer was buried under strata that predated the earliest dynastic records. What they uncovered shook the foundations of Egyptology. The discovery pointed to an origin not of kings, but of keepers. Whoever made these carvings wasn't documenting their present. They were warning about a forgotten past. And buried in the stone was a pattern that matched the constellation of Orion, yet positioned as it appeared not thousands but tens of thousands of years ago. Someone had been here long before history was supposed to begin. The symbols told no tale of gods or pharaohs. Instead, they spoke of reconstruction. Phrases translated from the fragments hinted at phrases like stone raised again and skymark remembered. These were not monuments to the dead. They were rebuilt monuments, designed to preserve something already lost. More eerily, the lower carvings included measurements and alignments impossible for early Egyptians to know. They matched not only solar cycles but deep lunar precession and shifts in Earth's axial tilt. How could anyone without satellites or telescopes encode such precision? Scholars brushed it off as coincidence, but not everyone agreed. Some insiders began referring to the site as the Vault of the Builders, architects not of culture, but of survival. Those who built so that others could remember. As more of the layer was cleared, a pattern emerged. The oldest stones, those bearing the impossible markings, had distinct where lines along the edges, as if salvaged from another site. Beneath the newer mortar, ancient dust samples told a story of relocation. They were not quarried from nearby Aswan, but from a source further south, deep within now-buried mountains. Whoever transported them had knowledge of terrain and tools we still can't replicate today. Even the foundational layout matched no known pyramid grid. Instead, it formed a spiral, inward-facing, converging on a single sealed vault. But when radar was used to scan the core, it bounced back with irregular interference, as though something inside was distorting the signal. Something dense, something metallic. The hieroglyphic layers built atop the original stone seemed to avoid referencing the builders beneath. They told only of gods and pharaohs. It was as if the scribes had been ordered to overwrite history, not preserve it. What little we now have was nearly lost. Only a collapsed slab gave access to the layer beneath. Among the strange symbols was an image, 6 figures raising a glowing sphere above a broken sky. Behind them, crumbled towers and waves devouring the land. This was no creation myth. It was a memory carved in panic. Beneath the builder's stone was a message. We are not the first. We will not be the last. An inscription near the core chamber showed a split calendar, one side lunar, the other solar. It matched with shocking accuracy the Yuga cycle of India, the Mayan Bakhtin system, and the pre-flood kings list of Sumer. But this was in Egypt, supposedly the cradle of stable chronology. The convergence of cycles suggested the builders weren't measuring years. They were tracking resets, massive ones. Every 12,000 years, according to the spiral script, a pulse, cosmic or terrestrial, reshaped the Earth. They called it the Day of Falling Suns. Was it metaphor, or memory of a comet, a flare, or worse? A fragment discovered near the sealed vault held the most chilling clue. It wasn't made of limestone, but a synthetic compound, dark, smooth, and fused at the molecular level. No ancient civilization had that ability, but this material wasn't decorative. It was inscribed with micropatterns, visible only under high magnification. Researchers believed it to be data storage, perhaps a lost form of crystal encoding. And when the same symbols were translated, they read like instructions. Not rituals, not prayers, engineering. Diagrams of pressure systems, magnetic fields, and acoustic modulation. It matched recent theories about the use of sound to move stone. But these plans were from a civilization that had already disappeared. If the pyramids were restorations, not creations, then everything we believe about Egyptian civilization is out of order. It suggests that early dynasties did not build from scratch, but inherited remnants of a world devastated and forgotten. There are stories across cultures of those who emerged from cataclysms to rebuild. Atlanteans, Anunnaki, the Seven Sages. Are these simply echoes of the builders? The vault suggests that knowledge, not myth, was passed down, but only in fragments. Each pyramid may be more than a tomb. It might be a puzzle piece of a greater mechanism. Or worse, a time capsule from a cycle of destruction we are doomed to repeat. Why cover this up? Perhaps because if true, it renders all modern chronology meaningless. It undermines the linear progress model. It implies that great knowledge was lost, not evolved. Worse, it suggests we are on the verge of repeating past collapse. Certain agencies have sealed access to the deeper vaults. Cultural ministries claimed it was for preservation. But anonymous footage from the site shows crates being moved out at night. Crates marked with radiation symbols, others with magnetic containment seals. What were they removing? One whispered theory among insiders is that the vault held something not just old, but active. A remnant of a forgotten technology designed to either warn or protect. Some claim it was a beacon, others a key, but the builders had left it behind, buried in a spiral, hidden beneath layers of erased history. Whatever it wasn't meant to be found, not yet. Today, only fragments remain, pieces of stone reburied under official orders. But the blueprint of the builders is out. Researchers and rogue archaeologists continue to piece together what they can. The spiral, the alignments, the countdowns, and the warnings. If the carvings are to be believed, then we are not just descendants of the ancient world, we are inheritors of a repeating story. One of rise and ruin. The builders tried to warn us through stone and symbol. But will we listen before the next fall? So now the pyramids stand not only as relics of kings, but as markers left by another world. A world that perished, yet planned for those who would come after. What else lies beneath our feet, hidden behind altered timelines and official silence? The vault was sealed once, perhaps for a reason, but we opened it. And what we found may only be the beginning, because in the next chapter, we uncover a curse not carved in myth, but burned into reality. A script erased for a reason, because when spoken, it might speak back. Chapter 8. the cursed script they tried to erase. Hidden within the Pyramid of Amenemhat III, in the dark halls of Ha-Era, lies a section of stone long dismissed as defaced. The carvings appear burned, scarred, and disjointed, nothing more than erosion, some said. But in 2004, a team scanning with ultraviolet light discovered something chilling. Beneath the blackened walls were faint outlines of symbols not catalogued in any Egyptian dialect. These weren't ornamental. They were arranged in a rhythm, a pattern, a script, one that whispered of something deeper than a curse of flesh. It claimed to ensnare the soul itself. The texts called it a sentence, not of language but punishment, the sentence that binds. And those who dared pronounce its syllables aloud reported disturbing events. Broken time perception, weeks of vanishing memory, and dreams that bled into waking life. What had been buried was not just a forgotten dialect. It was a weapon, a psychological construct meant to fracture reality itself. The deeper researchers dug, the more unsettling the implications became. Ancient Egyptians were known for curses, but these were theatrical, designed to warn off tomb raiders with fear of disease or misfortune. This was something else. The script didn't invoke gods or protect gold. It described concepts like memory inversion and dream siphoning, phrases that, when pronounced, allegedly corrupted memory over time, rewrote emotional anchors, and displaced core beliefs. Could language really do this? Some modern neurologists argue yes. In theory, if symbols carry enough association and rhythm, they can trigger deep psychological responses. The carvings at Ha-Era seemed designed for that very purpose, not to warn but to unravel. Records show that after the UV discovery, access to the chamber was quietly revoked. Several academic reports were withdrawn. The Egyptology division at a major European university suddenly canceled its long-term study. Internally, they cited mental health risks. Ancient priesthoods once believed in living words, phrases so charged with meaning they could reshape reality. In the Book of the Dead, some phrases were reserved only for death rituals, believed to grant or deny access to the afterlife. What if the carvings at Ha-Era were a darker counterpart, not for guiding the soul but for chaining it? Some believe these symbols are the remnant of a long-lost sect that splintered from the Osirian cults. These priests, it said, did not revere Osiris as god of rebirth, but feared him as the warden of an eternal prison. Their goal wasn't to live again. It was to lock away those deemed unfit for reincarnation. These symbols were their tools. The Egyptians feared non-being more than death. To be forgotten was the true end. If someone could be erased from memory, not just in life but in all consciousness, they were truly gone. The cursed script seemed engineered for that very purpose. Not to kill but to isolate. Some fragments appear to instruct the reader to visualize the target, pronounce the glyphs while facing a reflective surface, and then complete the chant in utter darkness. The answer may lie in the structure of the pyramid itself. Amenemhat III was obsessed with legacy. He built not one, but two pyramids, including the infamous Black Pyramid. Some say he feared death more than any pharaoh. Perhaps he also feared those who could return from it. One translation of the script speaks of the mirror sentence, a spoken loop that locks the soul in self-recognition, unable to detach from its identity. It's a linguistic trap, like a hall of mirrors for the mind. The idea is terrifying, that words could be built like architecture, carefully laid out to fold back on themselves, pulling the mind inward until it collapses. The notion might sound fantastical until you remember that human consciousness is shaped by language. We think in words. What happens when the words we use are designed to mislead us from within? What scared scholars most wasn't just the script's effect, but the attempt to erase it. Someone in the ancient world went to great lengths to scorch the wall and bury the glyphs under plaster and soot. Not destroy them, just hide them, as if afraid that total destruction might unleash something, that it was safer sealed, dormant, forgotten. But they didn't expect future generations with advanced technology to rediscover it. They couldn't imagine ultraviolet scans or linguists capable of pattern-matching unknown scripts. In their desperation, they left behind something more damning, a warning without explanation. There were rumors that one of the tablets from the chamber had been removed before the site was shut down. An anonymous leak in 2011 posted partial transcriptions online. Linguists and cryptographers scrambled to decode them, but half the document was corrupted. The parts that remained resembled recursive code, lines looping back with slight changes. Some software engineers said it looked like an early form of logic gate programming. But what was it programming? And if it worked on consciousness rather than machines, what does that say about how the ancients viewed the mind? In recent years, certain conspiracy forums began linking the cursed script to dream experiments in the 1970s. Subjects exposed to fragmented audio from unknown languages reported shared visions. A desert sky full of black suns, a pyramid that collapsed inward like an origami fold, and a chorus of voices reciting phrases backwards. While unverified, the consistency of reports is unsettling. One phrase allegedly translated to, "We are not the dead, we are the unfinished." That same phrase appears once, just once, on the chamber's rear wall, chiseled backwards. The Egyptian government, for its part, has remained silent on the cursed script. Tourists are not allowed near that section of the Khafre pyramid. Guides refer to it only as a structurally unstable wing. No new excavation permits have been granted there in over a decade. What makes this all more suspicious is that no photos of the UV glyphs have been officially released. All known images were leaked, and even those are heavily debated. But the accounts of those who saw it firsthand, before they disappeared from public record, were consistent. This script was meant to control thought itself. And if that's true, it would make it the most dangerous inscription ever carved into stone. Not because it can kill, but because it can unwrite a person's reality. It wouldn't matter how rich or powerful they were. If you forget who you are, you disappear. Not physically, but existentially. You become a ghost while still breathing. That is the true curse. Not death, but erasure. So as we step into the final chapter of the story, we must ask, why did the ancients go to such lengths to leave a warning carved in secrecy? And what greater danger were they preparing us for in their final message? Chapter 9, The Message for the End Times. The last chamber inside the Pyramid of Khufu was never meant to be opened. For centuries, the granite door behind the king's chamber remained sealed, too thick to breach without tools modern enough to cut steel. But in 2011, a robotic probe funded by an independent research group slipped through a borehole drilled decades earlier. What it revealed stunned the few who were allowed to see the footage. Etched into a polished limestone slab was a single, chilling image, one that defied all expectations. The earth, cracked in half, black smoke coiling into the sky, oceans rising high above continents. Above it all, a great boat floated, not on water, but in the heavens, carrying 9 indistinguishable figures whose eyes blazed like stars. For those who saw it, there was no mistaking the message. This was not just art. This was a warning, a prophecy sealed thousands of years ago, meant only for those who would one day face what the ancients foresaw. Scholars rushed to translate the few accompanying symbols, but they found no proper Egyptian grammar, no familiar hieroglyphic forms. Instead, the signs resembled what some call protoscripts, language predating dynastic Egypt, more aligned with early pre-Sumerian glyphs or the Indus Valley's undeciphered texts. Only fragments made sense. A broken sun, a turning of skies, a cycle ending. The rest remained enigmatic, as though encoded for a future mind. What unnerved even the most skeptical was the sequence of planetary bodies drawn in alarming accuracy, including some not visible to the naked eye. Uranus, Neptune, even Pluto. How could they have known? And more importantly, why carve them in a chamber so hidden it took millennia to find? In ancient myth, the Duat was the realm the soul traveled after death. But in this chamber, the Duat looked terrifyingly real. Not a mystical underworld, but Earth itself, fractured and burning. The Nile had disappeared beneath waves. The stars above shifted out of alignment. And in the center of it all, a massive celestial eye glared down from behind a ringed planet, Saturn. This was not just death. It was global extinction. Beneath the image, a single vertical symbol ran from floor to ceiling, a spiral coiling outward like a galaxy. It resembled diagrams used by modern astrophysicists to chart magnetic fields. Was this spiral a timeline, a countdown, or was it a cycle already in motion? What if the ancients knew time differently than we do? Not a straight line, but a circle, events destined to repeat. The idea of cyclical cataclysm appears not just in Egyptian records, but in myths from the Hopi, the Vedic texts of India, and even Plato's story of Atlantis. They all speak of worlds lost, of resets, of forgotten ages. This carving seemed to echo that warning. A world-ending fire, a flood that cleanses, a few who survive, adrift in the stars, carrying memory. 9 figures, always 9, like the Ennead, the 9 creator gods of Heliopolis, or perhaps 9 survivors meant to start again. The boat was not just a vessel, it was a seed. The timing is what disturbs modern researchers most. Astronomical data suggests the alignment depicted in the carving, where the Earth tilts and the skies realign, matches a rare astronomical configuration expected to occur in the 21st century. Polar shift theories, long dismissed as fringe, are now being reconsidered as Earth's magnetic field weakens. Climate anomalies grow more extreme. The jet stream fractures. Oceans rise. The sun's behavior grows more erratic. Some believe the pyramid's builders, whoever they truly were, measured these cosmic cycles with greater precision than we can even now, and they carved their knowledge into stone, knowing it might one day save us. There is one more detail. In the upper corner of the carving, a small, deliberate rectangle contains a single object, a key. Unlike any symbol in Egyptian art, it is shaped like a circuit, with loops and angles resembling modern microchips. Below it, 3 dots arranged in a triangle similar to star charts used in spacecraft navigation. Could this be a clue? Coordinate, a device? Some believe the chamber contains more than carvings, that behind the limestone slab is a vault, and within it, a relic buried to wait for the moment it is needed most. The project to explore deeper has been stalled, officially due to conservation concerns. Unofficially, there are whispers of interference. As the chamber was sealed once again in 2012, all images and data were locked behind government and private security walls. Researchers were sworn to silence, but a few fragments leaked, photos smuggled out, data logs partially recovered. Enough to confirm one truth: this was no ordinary tomb. It was a message, and perhaps more than that, a trigger, meant to awaken something lost in us. The ancients had watched the skies not out of superstition but memory. They had survived something before, and they knew it would return. The final chamber was not a prophecy. It was a record, and perhaps a guide. But there's a final twist. In 2023, satellite imaging detected an unusual electromagnetic spike near the Great Pyramid's base, right beneath the sealed chamber. It pulsed at intervals matching the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural frequency. Some suggest it is responding to changes in the planet itself. Others believe it is waiting for activation. Could it be that the pyramids are not just monuments, but devices, timers, beacons? If so, who set them? And why must they only be open now? What we once thought of as myth now stands at the edge of science. And this carving, hidden for thousands of years, may hold the final puzzle piece. In the end, we are left with more questions than answers. But one thing is certain: the ancients carved this for a reason, and they hid it where only a future world could find it. Not to glorify their dead, but to warn the living, to prepare us. The boat, the fire, the nine, the fracture. It is a story as old as time itself. And perhaps, if we learn to read it, we may write a different ending. One where we listen to the stones before the sky turns red. One where prophecy is not fulfilled, but avoided. That is the message carved into the last chamber. Their final whisper, meant for now.